Welcome back to the arrays lecture. This is part 3. The first example we're going to take a look at today is printing an array with specified values per line. In the last video we did print out a couple of arrays, but if you'll recall, we printed out all of the contents of an array on a single line. Well, this is fine if an array is a small array with short lengths, but what if you have an array with length 30 or maybe even 100? The next example we're going to have a length 30. It is kind of cumbersome to print all 30 values on the same line. Wouldn't it be nice to print out a specified number of values per line? So this is going to be some cookbook code that we are going to use in order to print out a certain number of values per line. So let's take a look at the output of this next program, the public class print array. So we take a look in the main and we see the first thing it does is declare a brand new array of ints of length 30. The name of the array is RA. The next line of code, we see it has an index. It's declaring an int I, which it will use to traverse the array. The first for loop is a one-liner for loop, and it's going to start at I equals 0 and go up to and include I equals 29. That's the last subscript in an array of length 30, I++, and it's going to populate the array with this one-liner, array subscript I equals I. What exactly is that going to do? Well, if we take a look at I equals 0, that would say array bracket bracket 0 equals 0. So it'll put the number 0 at location 0. And this for loop will continue to do that. So at subscript 1, it'll put the number 1 and so on and populate the entire array between 0 up through the subscript 29 with the numbers 0 through 29. Okay, so after that for loop is complete, we take a look at the next for loop in this program and we notice it's also going to traverse the entire array. And inside this for loop, it's going to have a printf statement, %3d array subscript I, and it's only going to go to the next line if I plus 1 mod 4 equals 0. And then it'll do a println with empty parentheses, which means just go to the next line. So let's take a look at the output then here. We'll step through this, knowing that the array is already populated with values 0 through 29. When I is equal to 0, we'll keep track of I up here. We're going to for sure print out the very first value, array subscript 0 with a 3-space field. So it'll print out space space 0, and then it'll check, is I plus 1 mod 4 equal 0? Well, I plus 1 in this case, 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 mod 4, that's the remainder when you divide 1 by 4. Well, when you divide 1 by 4, 4 goes into 1 how many times? 0. So then the remainder is 1. Well, 1 is definitely not equal to 0. So the if statement is false, so don't even do what it says to do. Instead, keep on going with the for loop. So the for loop would have I equal to 1, and then 1 is definitely less than 30, so continue with the for loop. Print out the next value, array subscript 1, which would be the value 1. Now check, is I plus 1, well I plus 1 will be 1 plus 1, which is 2, is 2 mod 4 equal 0? Well, no, because the remainder of that would be a 2. So don't do what the if statement says, instead increment I to a 2, and now print out that value at subscript 2, so space space 2, and now check, is I plus 1, which is 3, is 3 mod 4 equal 0? No, that remainder would be a 3, so keep going, I increments to a 3, and then we print out system.out.printf, array subscript 3, so space space 3, and now check to see if I plus 1 is a 4, is 4 mod 4 equal 0? Yes, that means we go to the next line and then continue. I would increment to a 4, we'd print out the contents of I subscript 4, space space 4, check to see if 4 plus 1, which is 5, is 5 mod 4 equal 0. Well, 4 goes into 5 once, I'm doing some division up here, and the remainder is 1, not 0. So that if statement is false. Keep going. I increments to a 5. We print out the contents of subscript 5, which is a 5. and then we check is I plus 1, which is a 6, is 6 mod 4 equal 0? No, because the remainder when we divide 6 by 4 is 2. Keep going, increment I to a 6, print out the contents of subscript 6, check now is I plus 1, which is 7, is 7 mod 4 equal 0? No, that remainder is a 3. Keep going, increment I to a 7, we print out the contents of subscript 7, which is a 7. Now check to see is I plus 1, which is an 8, is 8 mod 4 equal 0? Yes, it is, because when we divide 8 by 4, we definitely get a remainder of 0, since 4 divides 8 evenly. So yes, we're going to do a system.out.println empty parentheses. So do you notice the pattern here? I'm not even going to keep going with his example. It's going to print out the rest of the contents of the array. So you'll have, 8, 9, space 10, space 11, and then 11 plus 1 is 12. 12 mod 4 equals 0. Go to the next line. So it'll keep going and print out the rest of the contents of this array where it only prints 4 values per line, and so on and so on. Now here's a question for you. Think about this. Suppose on a lab, which I'm going to do in the future, I ask you to print out 5 values per line. What's the only thing in this entire program that would need to change? Everything would stay the same. And it turns out that if you wanted 5 values per line, this 4 would turn into a 5. Similarly, what if I said, well, I want you to print out 11 values per line? Well, in that case, then, you would have I plus 1 mod 11, and so on and so on. So please bookmark this in your course reader, because this is a very important example for the future.